guys, so this is Echo Soundworks here with a tutorial / walkthrough on my new sound set that came out on ADSR this last week. It's exclusive to ADSR, and it's called Melbourne Anthems. It comes with 175 massive presets, comes with 65 to 70 drum samples / FX samples, comes with a bunch of MIDI files, a Logic X section, and to top it all off, actually 2 royalty-free acapellas, both in mixed and dry versions, and you just heard the hook on one of them. And what I did was I just dragged in the file, made a new demo with the sounds from Melbourne for the purpose of this YouTube tutorial. So what we wanted to do for all the people who frequent our YouTube videos and want to learn on how to make presets, we actually wanted to extend a 50% discount to just you guys. The code is MELB50YT, MELB50YT for YouTube, and there'll be a link in the description, and things should be flashing across the screen. So if you wanted to pick up Melbourne Anthems, or if you liked what you were hearing, you can check it out. So everything you see here is actually included in the sound set. So for people who don't use Logic, all these green chunks, those are massive patches. The blue are audio. So here is the acapella right here. Here's claps that come with the kit, kicks, some effects like hat crashes and things like that, and some white noise risers that I included as well. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to make 2 sounds from this demo. I'm going to make this one, this kind of plucky sound that I have panned out left and right. And I will make this Melbourne lead it's in this section. And so just with this pack, I typically just do like basses, leads, plucks, pads, FX, and I actually included the whole section of presets for Massive called Synths, and that's like the one I just showed you, and it's layered with this other one right here. So that's the whole sound of those 2 together. But the reason I did that was I wanted to make the pack a little bit more versatile. So if you don't see yourself as a Melbourne or a Dirty Dutch type EDM producer, there's still 35 to 40 like of those synth presets that you'll be able to use in any genre of EDM. They'll just work for general, progressive house, electro, complexo, dubstep, all that stuff. So let's just jump right into it, and let me start making this new sound. So I have a new instance of Massive pulled up. Sounds terrible with that percussion, and you'll notice that all the sounds in Melbourne Anthems, all 8 macros are assigned on every patch, so you can like really quickly change a plucky bass to like a bass that has sustain or a lead or whatever. But I won't be making all 8 macros for this demo because it would take too long. I will be making a couple for the sound because I need them. So you might be able to see. If you're familiar with Logic, these little lines, those little gray uptick lines, that's automation information going on. And what I've done is I assigned the cutoff to one of the macros, and I just kind of bumped it up with my mod wheel. So I will be assigning that in the vibrato. So first thing you're going to do in Massive is you're going to, in oscillator 1, you're going to select the pulse saw, the virtual analog waveform, and turn the saw position down all the way, turn the pulse width to about halfway, and then the amp about halfway, and boost the filter slider a little bit higher than halfway, because we will be using both filter 1 and filter 2 for this sound. So activate oscillator 2, and I'm going to select, I really like these waveforms, the additive mix ones. I think they can do some pretty cool unique sounds, and they can kind of flavor, like this virtual analog pulse width wave sounds very saw-ish, and saw is one of the most commonly used waveforms out there. So I think the additive ones play well with like the square saw waveforms and the pulse saw. So with that, let's take the wavetable position down to under halfway, around there. The intensity you can do probably just a little bit above halfway, and keep the amp up all the way, and we're going to boost the slider a little bit so it's leaning more towards filter 1 on both of these. And let's actually pitch this real quick. So I'm going to pitch this down to -0.3, and I'm going to pitch oscillator 1 up to 0.7, so you just have 0.10 basically of detune going on. And now let's activate oscillator 3, and you're going to keep it on that square saw waveform, and you're going to keep the wavetable position where it's at, so it's leaning towards the saw side of the wavetable, and turn the intensity down just a hair, and you can keep the amp where it is, and I'm going to boost the F1 slider just a little. So here is the sound we have now after activating the 3 oscillators. All right, and in the noise oscillator, I used white noise. You could use bright noise too. It'd work just as well. So just turn the amp up a little. And turn the filter slider up. And I might come back to that later once we actually get the filter set up, because it might be kind of annoying to hear tons of white noise until we get all the filters taken care of. So let's go to our insert one, and I'm going to select bit crusher. And I'm going to turn the dry wet down to probably around 10 to 15 to 20%, and turn the crush up a good amount. All right, and now let's go. Now that we're kind of working left to right here, we got our oscillator squared away. Let's go to the filter section. I'm going to change this to serial so it actually hits both the filters that we'll end up turning on and activating here. And in filter 1, I'm going to select low pass 2. I'm going to turn that resonance down. I'm going to turn the cutoff to just a hair above halfway, and we'll be modulating this with an envelope and a macro in a little bit, so it's going to kind of kill the sound here. All right, and low pass 4 for filter 2. And I'm going to turn the cutoff all the way down for that. I'm going to turn this slider up so we actually turn up the volume on that, and turn the resonance all the way down. And then I'm going to turn this slider to about right around in there. And the sound, like I said, the sound will open up more once we start to get the macros back in. So let's go on to, now that we have that set up, let's actually go down to this macro section down here. I'm going to right click or control click on a Mac, and I'm going to just go swap with macro 2 because vibrato is set up by default. And I want to use my first macro for a cutoff. So I'm going to make it and call it cutoff. And I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to take it into my filter 1, and I'm going to drag it down all the way until you see that little notch happen. And you'll see it's moving right now anyway. That's because of the automation that I already had with the mod wheel. So now that we got that set up, let's actually drag that same macro into the cutoff for filter 2 here, and we're going to drag it almost all the way out. All right, and so if I just turn up the cutoff on my MIDI controller. So now that we got the initial macro control with the cutoff, let's click on the oscillator tab, and I'm going to turn the rate down just a little bit for the vibrato, and I'm going to give the sound a little bit of vibrato. All right, now let's go to our FX slot, and let's get the classic tube to kind of crunch things up a little bit on FX1 insert. And for the dry wet, you're going to turn it down a good amount because I pushed the drive past halfway. All right, and then for FX2, I'm going to select the reverb. And in this, you're going to turn the dry wet to around 35-40%, size just a little bit above halfway, density and color all the way out. And it's going to sound like a lot of reverb right now, and that will start to tame itself as we introduce the more plucky sound with the envelopes controlling the cutoff filters. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, and I can always come back to it. And then in the EQ, I'm going to boost some frequencies here. I'm actually going to cut this boost, but I'm going to boost the frequency, this frequency knob, and the high shelf to give it a little bit more shimmer. Okay, so we got the oscillators, the noise, the inserts, the FX, and part of the filter setup. Let's actually go on to our voicing tab, which is pretty important for this specific sound. And what you're going to do is turn the Unisonic up to 2, activate the pitch cutoff, and boost it just a little, and take it down from 1 to 0.10, so it's a little bit more controlled, a little bit more of a subtle effect. Okay, and you can obviously keep it on the polyphonic. And I'm going to turn the pan position on, but I'm going to take it to mono and then just dial it back just a little bit so I don't get crazy huge phase differences. Okay, cool. So now let's go on to our envelopes, which are the most important part to actually sculpting this sound. So in envelope 1, turn the attack down, keep the level up, turn the decay down, and the level all the way down, and then keep the release pretty much where it is. So if you got the decay in the right spot, and then we might boost the release here just a little. So this line should be around gate to 1 shot, anywhere in there should do. And let's actually take this and we're going to modulate the cutoff of filter 1, and I'm going to modulate it. I'm going to modulate it almost out all the way. So all the way is when you see that little notch. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's this little like notch that appears, but all right, and then I'm going to use that same envelope and modulate out on my cutoff for filter 2 as well. And now let's go on to envelope 2, which we'll be using to modulate the pitch of one of our oscillators. I'm going to do, you guys have probably seen me do this trick before, attack all the way down, decay all the way down, level all the way down, and then drag it into your pitch box that you want to modulate in an oscillator. I'm going to pitch it up to positive 64 to get some really high-end harmonics and snappiness going on. And now there won't be any change to the sound because I have the decay and level all the way down. But as I bring this decay back in, start to hear that little snap on the actual attack. I'm going to turn the level down just a little. And I'm going to do the same thing with the square waveform. But I'm just going to drag it up to 12 here instead of all the way to 64. And now that we got those two envelopes squared away, let's go to our 4th envelope, which is tied to the amp mod in massive. And this is we got to change this default shape here. So turn the attack all the way in. Keep the level all the way out to give it a good amount of volume. Turn the decay down to about, I'd say like 20% or so. And then turn this level down a little. And then crank up this release. And this is dependent on the sound and like what you're playing. I'm playing this kind of plucky thing, so I needed a lot of release. But if you're doing the same thing as me, this line right here should be around this trig 0 reset with your release out past halfway. Okay, and then I'm going to turn the crush up a little and the dry wet down just a pinch on it. Okay, and then finally, let's go to our 5th LFO. Well, I think I had it set up in the 6th LFO in mine, but you can use whichever one you want. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to select this triangle wave for the top part, and I'm going to select bending 8 for the bottom. So keep the X fade in the middle, so we're getting a little bit of both. And I'm going to jack up this rate and turn the amp down just a little because I'm not going to sync it. And I'm going to use this to control, kind of add a little bit more of detune to the sound. It's a really weird random number I did, but 1.13. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my os tab and turn up the depth a little on the vibrato. All right, and so I'm going to play the sound now that most of it's starting to get sculpted. I'm going to play it just on the keys here. So it does kind of double as a lead, which is why it's kind of a cool sound, which is why I liked it and used it in the demo. So I'm going to go back to the EQ here. So you hear that in filter 1, the reason why I have both these set up, it kind of brings in a lot more of that little bit brighter sound because it's a low pass 2 as opposed to a low pass 4. All right, so that is pretty much that sound that I used in the first part of the demo. Okay, and I did have that layered with I had it out left and right, which I'll do a lot with plucks. So let me do that real quick here, left and right, and then I had that layered with these other two. Okay, so moving on to the actual drop section, the actual Melbourne lead, this one. Let's make a new instance of massive here. This sounds actually pretty easy to make. It's pretty quick, which is cool. So I do have some third-party reverb going on some aux sends, so you will hear some reverb the whole time while I'm making the sound. So let's do a new sound here in massive. All right, and so the first thing you're gonna do, it's just gonna use one oscillator. So I'm going to select the mellow Mellifant waveform, so I should say mellow there, and we're gonna select 4 mans to give it that really buzzy saw type like sound, not like a saw waveform, but like actually like a saw. Turn the wavetable position down. It's gonna sound like a whistle, and then you turn this intensity in. You start to get more of a cool sound. So that's the only oscillator we're using. I am going to add a little bit of white noise. And now in the filter section, let's turn this up to serial and then keep that where it is. But in the filter section, I'm going to select scream. And for the cutoff, I'm going to boost past halfway. And I'm going to turn the scream down, and I'm going to turn the resonance down. I'm going to modulate both the cutoff and the scream with envelopes here in a second. So it'll bring more of that brightness back and that tone. And I'm going to boost just a little bit of filter 2 here, so there's no filter on it, and turn down my slider just a little. And that will be a little bit, that will make more sense once I start to modulate with the envelopes, just to let through some more of the actual sound. So now that we got the oscillator set up, we got the filter set up. Let's do some of the envelopes real quick. So in envelope 1, we're going to use this to kind of do that trick I used to add some attack to the sound. Turn the attack down, the decay and the level down, and then I'm actually going to turn this level way down, so it's just this little bump, and I'm going to use this to modulate the pitch of oscillator 1. Just to add a little bit of attack and snap to the actual attack of the sound, so it kind of cuts through with this progression. Okay, so let's actually, I'm going to clear out this macro. I don't want vibrato for the sound. So let's go to envelope 2. And in envelope 2, we're going to use this to modulate the cutoff of filter 1. So I'm going to keep the attack where it's at. Turn the, make sure you have the level all the way up. The decay down a little bit, and then crank up that level. And you can keep the release where it is. So you should get this kind of sloping shape. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to modulate out the cutoff all the way. So you see that little notch. And that will introduce a lot of the, it'll give it some volume, and it'll actually bring back some of that high end. So now let's go to envelope 3, and in envelope 3, we're going to use this envelope to modulate the scream. Turn the attack down all the way, the decay almost all the way, and the level pretty much all the way, maybe just a little bit out, so it has a little bit of breathing room. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it into the scream, and I'm going to macro out to maybe about the edge of the M. All right, so now we got the oscillator set up, a little bit of noise, the filters, envelopes with macro and modulations. I'm going to go to my oscillator tab here, and I'm going to give it more glide. And I'm actually going to, while I'm here, just for these Melbourne sounds, pitch bending's a big part of Melbourne. So I'll go up an octave, and for down, I'll actually probably go up down to 2 octaves, so you can get this really big bend. All right, and so I'm gonna go to the voicing tab and actually we gotta activate the the monophonic, so the glide will actually do something, and I'll do always for the trigger type. So now if I play it, you'll actually start to hear this glide we just set up. And because I'm only using one oscillator, I'll typically use restart via gate with sounds like that. So it's just a real consistent tone, and there's no detune going on, so sometimes the restart via gate will sound weird with detune unless you start to really play with the actual timing of it. But I think it sounds really good for Melbourne style leads. So now that we got that taken care of, the only thing left to do is set up the effects. So in insert 1, activate it, and we're going to do the sample and hold, so it'll say S and H. Turn the dry wet down a good amount, and then turn this pitch to about 65-70% maybe. It's adding some of that low end, and I'm actually going to take my the crosshair for envelope 3, and I'm going to modulate downwards on that. I'm sorry, I'm going to modulate upwards. I got that completely wrong. There you go. So modulate with that envelope upwards. Do not go down. It makes it sound really, really weird. Okay, so now last thing we gotta do is set up the effects. I used phaser for FX1 to help thicken the sound. And I didn't really want too much delay or anything or distortion on it. It needed to be a clear sound. So I kept the dry wet near 50%. I turned the rate up a little, dialed back the feedback so it wasn't as out of tune sounding, and the depth as well. All right, and so now I'm going to add just a little bit of reverb here. I'm going to turn the size down, the density, and the color up. And finally, the EQ, going to cut out some frequencies. So in Melbourne, you typically have the bass sound that you can hear in this demo and the kick on the 1 and 2 and 3, and so it's kind of that old like kick hi-hat thing, but you're using a kick and bass instead of a hi-hat. So what I want to do, typically what you want to do with any lead, is cut out some of that low end because you have so much low end going on with the basses and the kick. So if I play those for you. So yeah, it makes no sense to leave in too much of the low end on your lead sounds. It usually doesn't in most genres, but definitely in Melbourne. So I'm going to boost this frequency and turn up the high shelf a little. All right, so that's pretty much both of those sounds. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And like I said at the beginning of the video, there is a 50% discount to just you guys, the YouTube users, for Melbourne Anthems if you want to get it for about $12. That code is MELB50YT, and it is in the description. So if you haven't checked out Melbourne Anthems, go check it out. You can listen to the demo. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.